All right, number cube free response part B. And in this one, we have to figure out the longest run in the array. And what they mean by that is, they give some examples here, is a run is just like a repeated value. So at position 1, this is a run of 2 because we have 5 and 5. And then we keep going, and none of these are considered runs. If it's 1 long, it's not considered a run. And then in position 6, we hit a 2, and then we do that for 4 in a row, so that's a run of 4. Here's a run of 2, and then here's a run of 4 to end because you have 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. So the longest run would be 4, right? So this int that we return here is the longest run in this set of values. So we just have a single dimensional array of ints, and we want to find the longest run, longest repeated value in that array. All right, so the algorithm for this is kind of tricky. You're just going to keep track of the run, and if it's higher than the max run previously, it becomes the new max. That part's easy, hopefully. But the tricky part is, what's the algorithm for finding or checking for a run? So the way to do this, I think, is to do uh, two loops. So one is just going to check like sort of the starting position of the run. That's going to go all the way through to the end, except we probably don't need to do the last spot. We can probably stop this first loop here because there's not going to be any runs from that last spot there. Um, and so that's just going to start, and then the inner loop will be one more than that spot. And we want to check, is this J spot equal to our current spot we're at for I? And if it is, then we will have like a run of 2. Okay, and then you just keep going and counting how many times it is equal, right? So for the first one, it's not going to be equal at all. So then I will move over 1. Okay, and then J will start again on J is again an inner loop and say, okay, is this one equal to that one? And if it is, then the run will increase by 1, right? So it should have been 1 originally, and now it should be 2, right? And then J will move over again and say, nope, it's not equal. So now we have a run of 2. Check, is that greater than our max run? And if it is, it becomes a new max. Okay, so and keep doing that, right? Starting at 5, there won't be any run there. And so if we move over and do another example where there is actually a run, so let's say we get here, right? And then we'll start here and say, yep, it's equal, increase a count, increase a count. So now we have count like a run of 4, right? And so here we say, nope, the run breaks. And so now we have 4, and we say, is that 4 greater than our current max run? And if it is, it becomes the new max. Okay, and then we just keep doing this until I gets right here, right? Because again, I don't need to check all the way at the end, but we just keep loop throwing and figuring out the run amount and then updating a max count. Right, so hopefully that algorithm makes sense. All right, so here's some code, right? And I think in the directions it says if there isn't a max run, um, then we just return -1 if there is no longest run, right? And a run of 1, I think, does not count. Okay, so basically I'm going to do int max run, and I'm going to set that to be -1, representing we didn't find a run. And then I'm going to do my 2 for loops. So you can use whatever you want, but I'm going to use I and J. Okay, and so I'm going to go while I'm less than the length of the array. Okay, and you can actually do -1 there because you don't need to go to that very last index on the outer loop. So less than length -1. And then I'm going to go for int J equals I plus 1 plus, and J, same thing as less, but I'm going to go all the way to the end here for J because J could go all the way to the end of the array. All right, and so what I want to do is I want to do like a count. So count how many times it is the same. So I'm going to do int count, and I'm going to start it at 1 because we always have a run of 1 by default at the start. So like visually, sorry, my computer's freaking out, is like you always have a run of 1 number, right? This 4 is a run of 1, this is 3. And then each time it matches each time position I matches position J. So maybe I'll do an example here. We start at 1, and then each time I matches J, we increase that run count by 1. Okay, so basically I'm going to do if the values, all sorts of trouble typing. If values position I equals values position J, then I want a plus plus to the count. Basically the run gets a little bit longer. Okay, and so here to me is kind of a tricky part of this is if they're not equal, we don't want J to run all the way to the end, right? Basically we want to break out of this inner loop because we don't want to keep checking, right? Again, once it's not equal, we don't want J to run all the way to the end checking. We want to break the inner loop. Okay, so to make that happen, so if they're not equal, our run has ended and we need to break the inner loop. So the easiest way to do that is just to set J to be values dot length, right? Because that's kind of our condition for the inner loop ending. So if we just set J to values dot length, that'll make the inner loop end. I think you could probably type the word break here. I would just worry that that would maybe break both loops, but this is probably the safest way that I know how to do it. That will for sure break the inner loop, but not the outer loop. Okay, so this loop here essentially counts how many repeated values we have, all right? And then once we have that count done, now we want to say, is that count greater than our max run? And if it is, it becomes the new max run. So max run becomes count. All right, so there is only one flaw. So at the end, obviously, I'm going to return it. So I'm going to return my max run because that's what we want to know, the longest run that's in here. So we return that for our method. And then there's only one other part of this that's kind of messy is they don't want to count runs of 1, right? I think if I read these directions right, then if there are no runs, I should read through this again real quick. So based on this, it says if there are no runs, when you value return -1, that to me is kind of ambiguous, but I'm going to guess that it doesn't want to return 1. Like if it has just one repeated number, then it's not considered a run of 1. So the way this code works now is if there's a run of 1, it would return that. So I'm not sure what they actually are looking for in there, but if they don't want runs of 1 to count, what I would do here is only set max run to be count if it's not equal to 1. So we could do something like this that basically says if count is greater than the max run and it's not 1, then it becomes a max run, right? And this way it'll only be overwritten if it's something more than 1. Okay, and then we return that max run, which could be -1 if it never gets overwritten here. So that's kind of nitpicky, and I'm not really sure if that's part of this question or not, but just to be safe, I'll throw it in there. All right, that is it. Give me feedback if you need anything on this question. Thanks.